truck with a mass of 1,800 kilograms is traveling eastbound at 15 meters per second, while a car with a mass of 900 kilograms is traveling westbound at 15 meters per second. The two vehicles collide head-on, becoming entangled. Find the speed of the entangled vehicles after the collision, and B. Find the change in velocity of each vehicle, and C. Find the change in kinetic energy of the system consisting of both vehicles. So for this, let's make a simple diagram. Say this is the truck, and let's make a car. Yan. Both are going 15 meters per second. Yan. To eastbound and westbound ng 15 meters per second. For this, we are going to use the formula for conservation of momentum. And the formula for conservation of momentum is initial momentum is equal to final momentum. And for this, we can rewrite the equation as m sub 1 times v sub 1 plus m sub 2 times v sub 2 is equal to m sub 1 times v sub 1 prime plus m sub 2 times v sub 2 prime. May 2, like 1 and 2 kasi there are 2 vehicles. So, since nag-collide sila and they had the same, like, nag-collide sila and then sabi dito, the velocity sub 1 and the velocity, like the velocity sub 1 prime, the final velocity of the first vehicle and the final velocity of the second vehicle is equal. Therefore, we can just refer to both of them as final velocity. So if we are going to rewrite this, we are going to get m sub 1 times final velocity prime, the m sub 1 prime plus final velocity is equal to m sub 2 prime times final velocity. And kapag i-factor natin, we're going to get final velocity multiplied by m sub 1 prime plus m sub 2 prime. This. Yan. So we're going to insert it in this equation. Like in yan. We're going to get m sub 1 times v sub 1 plus m sub 2 times v sub 2 is equal to final velocity multiplied by m sub 1 prime plus m sub 2 prime. Since we're looking for the final velocity, we can just divide both sides by m sub 1 prime plus m sub 2 prime. M sub 1 prime. And we can cancel this. And eto na yung gagamitin nating formula. And we could just simply plug in the values. Final velocity is equal to mass 1 is 1,800 kilograms times velocity 1, that is 15 meters per second, plus mass 2, just 900 kilograms times 15 meters per second ulit, over 1,800 mass 1 plus 900. Ayan. And when we compute that, we are going to get the answer na final velocity of 5 meters per second. And that is letter A. Yan, that's letter A. Next is we need to find the change in velocity of each vehicle. So dito tayo for letter B. Let's find the change in velocity of the vehicle. To find the change in velocity, we're going to use the final velocity minus initial velocity. So for the first vehicle, which is the truck, the final velocity is 5 meters per second and minus the initial velocity, that is 15 meters per second. And we are going to get negative 10 meters per second. And then for the change in the velocity of the second vehicle, we have 5 meters per second minus negative 15 meters per second. Why negative 15 meters per second? Because the car is going westbound. So it's in the negative x direction. And we're going to get here positive 20 meters per second. So these are the changes in velocity for both vehicle 1, for the truck, and the car. And so, next tayo, for letter C, what is, find the change in kinetic energy of the system consisting of both vehicles. For this, we can use the formula ng like change in kinetic energy, and that is initial kinetic energy minus final kinetic energy minus initial kinetic energy. So let's first find the initial kinetic energy. The formula for kinetic energy is 1 half m sub 1 times v sub 1 squared plus 1 half m sub 2 times v sub 2 squared. We're going to we're going to plug in the values. Actually, before we plug in the values, sorry. We're going to plug in the values. We are going to put 1 half times 1,800 times the velocity, which is the velocity, which is 15 meters per second squared, quantity squared, plus 1 half times 900 times 15 meters per second squared. And for the initial kinetic energy, we are going to get the answer of 303,750 joules. For final kinetic energy naman, we're going to do the same. 1 half times 1,800, which is the mass, multiplied by the final velocity of both vehicles. So the final velocity of both vehicles is 5 meters per second plus 1 half 900 times 5 squared, 5 meters per second squared. That is equal to 33,750 joules. To find the change in kinetic energy, we're simply going to subtract the initial kinetic energy to the final kinetic energy, and that is 303. This one, we're simply going to do change in kinetic energy, 33,750 joules minus 303,750 750 joules, and we are going to get the answer of negative 270,000 joules. And this is the change in kinetic energy. And this is letter C.